men's foil U.S. national team coach, Greg Massialas. Coach, your son, Alexander, Olympic silver medalist, world medalist, multiple Olympic medals now, receives a ton of attention, rightfully so, but also Sabrina has had a ton of success. Junior world champion among a slew of other awards. How does your approach to coaching them as your children and as a high-level coach differ?
Well, it is very different, number one, because how you have to coach girls versus guys. I mean, there's certain tactical things that you have to adjust for, that's one thing. But beyond that, I mean, it's a matter of, with boys, you can sometimes be a little more direct and point forward. With girls, you have to be a little bit more sugarcoat whatever's going on to kind of get to the point so they don't all of a sudden become negative about what happens. I think if you say something like, I say to Alexander, that was pretty stupid. If I say that thing to Sabrina, she's like gonna turn on me, So it's something that happens. And yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is you talk about Alexander has all these accolades, he has 2 medals from the Olympics this time and world championships and everything else. The truth is Sabrina is also the current junior world champion, and she has tremendous thing. It's just that she's younger, 3 years younger, and they had no team event, which I think that had we had a team event at the Olympics, I think there's a very good chance that the women's team would have done something. But that's another issue altogether. That's kind of getting ready for Tokyo 2020. But in the meantime, it is a very distinct difference, and I have to be able to adjust not just the tactics, but of course, especially, my wife keeps telling me how you say it.
2 ways to say everything, right? And how about as far as the communication approach? 2 very different fencers, different ages, of course, different genders. As far as the techniques or tactics, how do those aspects compare to one another with Alexander and?
Well, I mean, it's very different because it's foil, but it's a men's foil versus women's foil. So the tactical approach in the one weapon is very different than the other weapon. So you kind of have to go with that sort of perspective. Number one. Then the second thing is in terms of their strengths and their weaknesses, and so they both have different kind of strengths a little bit. And because of the men's game is a little faster and stronger, and they kind of give a little more freedom to the attack, Alexander is able to kind of be able to make actions, and a lot of the men's matches finish in the first period, for example. The girls' matches tend to last through the third period. So tactically, there's a lot more differences you have to kind of be able to adjust to. And with Sabrina, then subsequently build on her strengths, but then within the confines of the sort of women's game.
Definitely. All right, Coach. Well, thanks for sharing.
Yeah, and I'm also looking forward to see what happens this quadrennial. I think we have a lot of exciting things in foil, both on the men's and the women's side. I think that we're not quite sure what's going to happen in terms of the actual events at the Olympic Games. By September, we'll know what's going on. But so in terms of what happens, but I think our men's squad is really strong. It'll probably be pretty much the same group with maybe a little additional or some little minor tweak of sorts. I think the women's is also the same. It's a very similar kind of thing. And I do think that the women have a distinct opportunity to win the gold medal, win it all. I mean, if we can keep the core of that group together, you've got Lee Kiefer, you've got
Nicole Ross,
Sabrina, Margaret Liu. We don't know what's going to happen with Nzinga because she had surgery. But the reality is that there's a very solid group. And even behind them, there's also Jackie Dubrovich. There's
Deschner.
Not just Deschner, but, Maggie. Anyway, she's
Notre Dame, fellow Notre Dame fencer.
Anyway, so all of a sudden I have a blank senior moment. But the reality is that the women's team is a really solid group, and I think that Madison Zeiss, that's what it is. And the reality is there's a very solid group, so it's not just 4 of them. The men, you kind of have these 4 really so super outstanding, and then you have kind of a gap, and there's some other ones that are kind of there, but those guys can't, they have a hard time making it to the second day a lot of times, and just to make the second day. Whereas the top guys are in the 16, or often in the 8.
Already this season,
winning.
We're seeing
we won 2 of the 3, and the other one we were second in. So it's a lot of good stuff that we have there. So I think the men's is going to be probably fairly similar. The women, I think, also though, looking at it, I think we have a really good chance this quadrennial.
And to that point, I guess with another U.S. national foil team coach, you now have Sabrina training under Coach Bucky Leach at Notre Dame with that big shift. How, you talked with us previously about kind of your role as national team coach and how you're trying to keep everyone on the same page with the men's side, but now working with another high-level coach like Bucky at Notre Dame, how does that help you kind of still oversee Sabrina's training?
Well, I do. I mean, even last year, even though Gia was giving her lessons, so she would come and kind of do that thing. And with Bucky, we've kind of worked it out. He actually, we videotape some of our lessons so he can actually watch, just him and sort of be able to emulate some of the concepts that we're trying to do, the things that I'm trying to sort of go across. And as a consequence, we're working very closely to see how's best for it. And it's, we're very fortunate that Bucky went to Notre Dame because Sabrina, I think it's a great opportunity. Not that Gia is not a very good coach, but I think that the fact that Bucky is the national coach, he travels with the girls, he's been there, and also a lot of times I'm not able to, because of my responsibility to the men, to be there a lot of times. So therefore he's sort of been coaching her and dealing with it, and that sort of interaction I think is working really well right now. And I think given 3-4 years as we get ready for Tokyo, I think this is only going to work better and better.
Yeah, and it's full time rather than once a month.
Right, exactly. So I think that, I think it's really worked out really well, and I'm really happy. It was her choice to go to Notre Dame. We thought about Stanford, and we would like to do that, all that kind of situation. But the reality was that that's what she wanted to go. And she tried several other schools. She went to Tech and she goes, nope, this is the one I want to go to. So that's where she ended up going. And Sabrina is very strong-minded. And so, and I think that's where she should do. Alexander, his goal was Stanford, so he wanted to go to Stanford. And that's where he wanted to be. And he's really happy where he's at. And that's worked out really well for us as well. Been a little busy, which is like last year, he took the year off. And so come back to, he's a mechanical engineering student, so it's very difficult. So even this year, he's like a lot of classes, very difficult challenges, but he's able to maintain his #1 world ranking. So, I think all things kind of work out.
And you mentioned your communications with Gia, of course, the Notre Dame head coach. In touring Notre Dame earlier this year, he talked a lot about how instrumental you were in the process of helping Garrick transition from your system to the system at Notre Dame. Most coaches probably hear way too much from previous coaches who think they know everything, whereas you as a national team coach, it's probably a great ally in that training. How instrumental is that to be able to have such reception from the passing of the torch, if you will?
Well, I mean, I think that when you're talking about these really high-level athletes, and I think both Sabrina, Alexander, Garrick, these are all, senior national team members when they're leaving, going to college. So
world medalists.
Yeah, world medalists, junior world champions, all those kind of things. I think that when you see that situation with those people, I think he is very good about being able to really interact properly and not, as he says, I don't want to screw anything up. And so I think we're able to work really closely. I mean, it's very difficult across the board with everybody, but I think with a few of these sort of star pupils, I think different programs looking at it. And I think that it behooves the program itself, because if a program draws a star pupil and that person blossoms there, it's good for that university. Both in terms of being able to draw people, other high-level people that can see that
continued development.
Correct, exactly. Whereas the top-level person goes to someplace and you see they go nowhere, then eventually the word gets out. Well, doesn't seem like it's necessarily going to work out for everybody. So I think that that's a good thing. But I think Gia really likes to see fencers succeed at the highest level, and I think that's why it's worked out really well. Of course, Alexander at Stanford, he trains with us and does the whole thing, and so that works out well.
All right, definitely seeing that in the results side. Thanks a lot, Coach.
My pleasure. Take care.